Israeli military say a conducted airstrike targeted and killed Islamic Jihad group leader Khalid Mansour as cross-border tensions continue.
The UN Nuclear Watchdog chief says there's a very real risk of nuclear disaster after Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant was hit by shelling. Protesters took to the streets in 2 separate marches in Italy yesterday to demand justice for the killing of a Nigerian street vendor by an Italian man.
An Israeli airstrike killed a senior commander in the Palestinian militant group, the Islamic Jihad. The fighters said on Sunday, their second leader to be slain amid an escalating cross-border conflict. Recent fighting has killed at least 32 Palestinians and seen hundreds of rockets fired. The leader in question who was targeted and struck was Khalid Mansour, who led the Iranian-backed Islamic Jihad operations in the southern Gaza Strip. Palestinian militants have retaliated to the Israeli airstrikes with a barrage of their own rockets. According to health authorities in the Palestinian territory, 6 children were among those killed in the attacks since the, quote, Israeli aggression Friday. But Israel said it had irrefutable evidence that a stray rocket from Islamic Jihad militants had been responsible for the death of multiple children in Jabalia in northern Gaza on Saturday. It's not immediately clear how many children were killed in the incident in Jabalia. Israeli Prime Minister Yair Lapid held a security cabinet meeting on Saturday night, warning deadly aerial operations against militants in Gaza could last a week. In the worst violence between Israel and Palestine since the 11-day war in 2021.
Smoke rising from Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant, the biggest in Europe. Their concerns after it was hit by shelling, causing one of the reactors to be shut down. Moscow and Kyiv are blaming each other for the incident. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says the situation is serious.
Unfortunately, the situation around the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant is aggravating. Russian terrorists became the first ones in the world to use the plant for terror. We will bring the world's attention to that and insist on new sanctions against Russia for creating such global threat.
UN Nuclear Watchdog chief Rafael Grossi says there's a very real risk of nuclear disaster and wants IAEA experts to be allowed to inspect the damage. And EU Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell tweeted that military activity around the plant was a serious breach of nuclear safety rules. In other news, Ukraine says Russian forces yesterday began an assault on 2 key cities in the eastern Donetsk region and kept up rocket and shelling attacks on other Ukrainian cities. The deputy mayor of the Russian-occupied city of Novokakhovka in the Kherson region has died in hospital after being shot. Meanwhile, 2 of 3 more ships that are carrying thousands of tons of corn from Ukraine have anchored north of Istanbul, awaiting inspection. The Maltese-flagged Rozhen, destined for the United Kingdom, arrived shortly after the Navistar, which is heading towards Ireland. A third freighter made the reverse journey, arriving at the port of Chernomorsk for loading grain.
Taiwan's Premier Su Seng-chang says China has arrogantly used military actions to disrupt regional peace and stability. Chinese military exercises around the island are set to wrap up on Sunday, but Beijing has announced fresh drills in the Yellow Sea, located between China and the Korean Peninsula, to take place next week. Furthermore, Chinese diplomats continue their campaign to lay the blame on the US for causing chaos in the region. On Saturday, China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Hua Chunying accused the US of interfering in Beijing's internal affairs. She added that Washington should have stopped Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan last week. The United States, on the other hand, has accused Beijing of being provocative and irresponsible.
Almost half the global container fleet, nearly 90% of the world's largest ships, passed through the Taiwan Strait this year. Since their missile launches, Beijing has taken an irresponsible step of a different kind. They've shut down 8 different areas where our 2 countries have been able to work together.
Meanwhile, Chinese State Councillor and Foreign Minister Wang Li met on Friday with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, with Russia backing China's One China principle.
A massive fire is still raging uncontrolled at an oil storage facility in Cuba, set off by a lightning strike on Friday night. One person has died, 17 firefighters are missing, and 120 others were injured following 4 explosions at the Matanzas supertanker base. The government says it's asked for help from experts from friendly countries with experience in the oil sector. Authorities in Iceland say noxious gases from a volcano that's erupted near the capital Reykjavik threatens to pollute air in the city, which is just 40 kilometers away. They say concentrations of sulfur dioxide could reach a level considered unhealthy for the sensitive. Despite warnings for people to avoid the site, visitors have been flocking to see its lava flow.
French authorities are working around the clock to try and free a dangerously thin beluga whale that has strayed into the Seine River in France. The lost mammal was first spotted on Tuesday. By Saturday, it had made its way about 70 kilometres north of Paris. Rescuers have tried to feed the whale, but it's so far refused, sparking fears it could slowly starve in the waterway and die.
Protesters took to the streets of Civitanova Marche in Italy yesterday to demand justice for the killing of a Nigerian street vendor. 2 marches, one attended by Alika Orgochukwe's widow. Her husband was beaten to death in the well-to-do Adriatic beach town by an Italian man with a documented history of mental illness. A widely circulated video by one witness shows the aggressor wrestling Orgochukwe to the ground and strangling him. Organisers of the first march said they did not want the search for justice to be clouded by accusations of racism that they feel cannot be proven. However, a second march organised by black Italians along the same route called on authorities to recognise the role of race in the incident. Several witnesses filmed the July the 29th assault but failed to physically intervene, adding a layer of public outrage over apparent indifference. People have left flowers and notes of condolences on the sidewalk where Orgochukwe died.
Snapshots of life in Pompeii continue to emerge as archaeologists uncover new artifacts at the site that's been frozen in time since Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD. Some of the more remarkable objects found include perfectly preserved bowls and dishware, along with a 3-legged accent table that looks surprisingly modern.
Here we can see the cabinet with the wooden part of the doors, and these are the supports. You have to imagine they are positioned this way to allow the cabinet to open. Inside the cabinet there were shelves, and what we see is this shelf collapse when the volcano erupted. Inside we find glass objects, like these bottles, but also ceramic, like these vases, that we are gradually discovering.
The recently excavated rooms in the ancient city shed light on how the middle classes lived. While past excavations have generally focused on Pompeii's wealthiest, more and more research is being dedicated to its middle and lower classes, including enslaved people and servants.
There's no street nor statue in his honour. For many, the social footprint of former president of Yugoslavia, Josip Broz Tito, is a delicate subject. But now, a new walking tour in Croatia's capital, Zagreb, is hoping to trace the leader's complicated legacy in a city where he remains divisive.
We still have heated debate, even 42 years after Tito has died. So the aim of the tour is to try to normalize the debate, because we cannot not acknowledge that Tito was one of the political giants of the 20th century.
The tour does not sugarcoat the past. Tour guide Daniela Matujevic explores Tito's ability to keep ethnic tensions under control, while also discussing his authoritarian regime and poor human rights record. For tourists, it's something different.
I
wanted to hear some things that are maybe not known, that are not talked about. It's something new in Zagreb, instead of just seeing the cathedral, the stone gate, and other tourist attractions.
The Walk with Tito tour takes people to 8 sites in downtown Zagreb, linked to the Croatian-born leader and the anti-fascist movement he founded at the start of World War II, commonly known as the Partisans. It also stops at the square once named after the leader, as well as his former residency.